retirement party, calling him the one who actually holds the power. I smiled and walked away. By 7:14 a.m., her boss's company was collapsing. By noon, my son lost his scholarship. By evening, I discovered she'd been selling our secrets for crypto. Then I found out what really happened the day our daughter died. My name is Elliot Brennan. I'm 52 years old, 23 years running Brennan Logistics Solutions in Seattle, 19 years married to Vanessa, and 20 years raising 2 kids, one of whom we buried 5 years ago this March. Her name was Lily. She was 15. Tonight was supposed to be my retirement party. Vanessa planned it. String lights in the backyard, catered salmon, 100 guests. She wore red, a dress I'd never seen before, and moved through the crowd like she owned it. She'd been the liaison between my company and our biggest partner, Hammond Supply Chain Systems, for 5 years. The role gave her purpose after Lily died. I was glad she had it, or so I thought. The toast came at 9:30. Vanessa tapped her glass, and the garden went quiet. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," she said, smiling. "Elliot's worked so hard for so long, but I also want to recognize someone else, someone who's been instrumental in keeping this partnership strong." My chest tightened. "Tyler Hammond," she said, turning toward him. Mid-30s, navy suit, easy grin. "To the man who actually holds the power. Thank you, Tyler." She lifted her glass stem. The garden went silent. Then the laughter started, polite, nervous, some downright smug from Tyler's circle. I smiled. The kind people mistake for grace. Then I set my scotch down, turned, and walked back into the house. Not a single footstep followed me. Inside, I went straight to my study, opened the bottom drawer of my desk, and pulled out the black folder I hadn't touched in 6 months. Labeled in my own handwriting, disclosures. Power doesn't make toasts. It doesn't wear expensive suits. Power waits. And when it moves, it doesn't ask permission. I sat down and opened the folder. Every email Vanessa had forwarded to Tyler's personal Gmail over the past 8 months. Every FYI, and for context, that had slowly bled our strategic advantage to Hammond Supply Chain. Every breach of Clause 9.3 she didn't even know she was committing. I logged into the mirror inbox I'd created months ago, linked to Vanessa's company account. Completely legal. Completely invisible. I began drafting the email. Subject: violation of Joint Partnership Integrity Clause. Immediate review recommended. Attached: a 37-page PDF. Every violation, time-stamped, cross-referenced. Recipient: the Compliance Subcommittee at Hammond Supply Chain. The same board that had no idea their CEO had been sleeping with a married woman while receiving intel that should have triggered every alarm. I didn't hit send. I scheduled it for 7:14 a.m. Monday morning, the exact time I used to wake up for work. Outside, someone laughed. Might have been Vanessa. Might have been Tyler. I thought about Lily. About the last conversation we had before the accident. She said I loved my company more than I loved her. I told her that wasn't true, that I was building something for her future. She died 3 days later. Vanessa blamed me. Maybe she was right. I closed the laptop. The scheduled email sat in the outbox, a ticking clock neither of them could hear. Tomorrow morning, the power would shift, and this time it would be mine. The party wound down like a drunk uncle, loud, staggering, full of bad decisions. Most guests left by 10. A few lingered around the fire pit, their laughter drifting through the cracked patio door, just loud enough to remind me I wasn't part of any real conversation tonight. I stayed in my study, lights off, staring at the screen. The folder sat open on my desk. 37 pages of documentation, each one a small detonation waiting to happen. But as I scrolled through the exhibits again, something else caught my eye. Something I'd flagged weeks ago, but hadn't fully processed until now. A transaction record, buried in Vanessa's personal bank statements, the ones I still had access to from our joint accounts. A series of deposits over the past 8 months. Always the same amounts, 5,000, 10,000, 15,000. Never consistent enough to establish a pattern, but frequent enough to add up. $183,000. I cross-referenced the dates with the emails she'd sent Tyler. Every deposit came within 48 hours of a major document transfer. Market entry plans, competitor analysis, revenue forecast for Q3 and Q4. She wasn't just having an affair. She was selling our company's intelligence. My hands tightened on the edge of the desk. This wasn't about romance or feeling appreciated or whatever bullshit justification she'd probably rehearsed in her head. This was transactional, cold, calculated. I pulled up the cryptocurrency wallet address I'd found in her browser history last month. She'd been sloppy, left it open on her laptop one morning when she rushed out for a meeting. The wallet showed incoming transfers matching the exact amounts in her bank account. Payments from an anonymous sender, routed through 3 different exchanges to obscure the origin. But I traced it. Took me 2 weeks and a contact in the fintech world who owed me a favor, but I traced it. The source, a shell company registered in Delaware. Owner of record, Hammond Supply Chain Systems. Tyler had been paying her. Not with company funds, that would have been too obvious, but through a subsidiary buried so deep in their corporate structure that even their own board probably didn't know it existed. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. This changed everything. What I thought was a betrayal driven by ego and emotion was actually corporate espionage. And that meant the evidence I compiled wasn't just about Clause 9.3 anymore. It was about fraud, about deliberate theft of proprietary information that had cost us contracts, clients, and millions in lost revenue. I opened a new document and started cataloging the financial trail. Every deposit, every corresponding email, every piece of data Vanessa had leaked that directly benefited Hammond's negotiations with our mutual clients. Then I found it. The smoking gun. 6 months ago, we lost a major contract with a retail logistics firm based in Portland. They'd been our client for 8 years. Then suddenly, without warning, they switched to Hammond Supply Chain. At the time, our sales team couldn't figure out why. We'd offered better rates, better service, better everything. Now I knew. 2 weeks before the client jumped ship, Vanessa had forwarded Tyler our entire pricing structure for that account. Not just the published rates, the internal cost breakdowns, the profit margins, the exact thresholds where we can negotiate. Tyler had undercut us by 3%, just enough to win the contract without raising suspicion. That single loss had cost us $2.4 million annually. I pulled up my phone and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in years. David Park, old friend from business school, now running a boutique firm that had gone under last year. I'd always wondered why. We'd grabbed coffee 6 months ago, and he'd been vague about the details. So the market shifted, clients moved on. I opened his LinkedIn. His company had been in the same space as ours, logistics consulting, supply chain optimization, and his biggest competitor at the time of collapse, Hammond Supply Chain Systems. My stomach turned. I texted him, David, need to ask you something. Did you ever work with Vanessa Brennan on any joint projects with Hammond before your firm closed? 3 dots appeared. Then yeah. Why? Did she have access to any of your strategic docs? A longer pause. Then, she was the liaison. Had access to everything. Why? What's going on? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Vanessa hadn't just betrayed me. She'd helped destroy my friend's livelihood. And she'd done it for money. I added David's company to the list of evidence. Cross-referenced the timeline. Found 3 more emails where Vanessa had shared proprietary data that directly correlated with Hammond winning contracts that should have gone to other firms. This wasn't just about us anymore. This was about a pattern. A deliberate, sustained effort to funnel intelligence to Tyler Hammond in exchange for cash. Outside, I heard Vanessa's voice. She was saying goodbye to the last guest, her tone light and cheerful. Like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just publicly humiliated me in my own backyard while sitting on nearly $200,000 in blood money. I saved the updated file, encrypted it, backed it up to 3 different drives. Then I added a new recipient to tomorrow's email, the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Because this wasn't just a corporate breach anymore. It was fraud. I didn't sleep that night. Didn't even try. Sleep felt like surrender, and I wasn't ready to surrender anything yet. Instead, I sat at my desk and kept digging. The folder had grown from 37 pages to 62. Every new exhibit made the picture clearer and uglier. Vanessa and Tyler hadn't just stolen intelligence. They'd weaponized it against people who trusted me. Around 2 in the morning, I pulled up the financial statements for Brennan Logistics. Our quarterly reports for the past 2 years. Revenue had been declining steadily since last year, and I'd blamed it on market saturation, increased competition, the usual suspects. But now, looking at the timeline, I saw something different. Every major contract loss coincided with an email Vanessa had sent to Tyler. We weren't losing business to better competitors. We were losing it to a company that knew exactly what we were bidding, exactly where our margins were, exactly how low we could go before we'd walk away. The numbers were brutal. Over the past 18 months, we'd lost $4.7 million in annual recurring revenue. Contracts that should have been renewals became defections. Clients who'd been loyal for years suddenly found better offers elsewhere. All because my wife had turned our strategy sessions into a commodity she could sell. I pulled out my retirement portfolio, the one I'd been building for 23 years, the safety net that was supposed to carry Vanessa and me through our golden years. Most of it was tied up in stock, 60% in Brennan Logistics, 40% in Hammond Supply Chain. The Hammond position had been Tyler's idea 3 years ago. He'd pitched it as a gesture of partnership solidarity, a way to align our interests. I thought it was smart at the time. Now I understood it was insurance. If I ever moved against him, I'd be destroying my own net worth in the process. The current value of my Hammond stock, $3.8 million. If the partnership dissolved and the scandal went public, those shares would crater. Analysts would downgrade the company. Investors would bail. I'd be lucky to recover 40 cents on the dollar. I did the math. A 60% loss meant losing $2.3 million from my retirement. I stared at the number for a long time. Then I opened the email draft and confirmed the scheduled send time. 7:14 a.m. Monday morning. Some prices are worth paying. I heard movement upstairs. Vanessa, probably waking up to use the bathroom. Her footsteps crossed the ceiling above me, soft and oblivious. I thought about David Park again. About the text he'd sent me an hour ago when he couldn't sleep either. If you've got something on Hammond, use it. That company destroyed everything I built. I lost my house, Russell. My marriage fell apart. I'm working at a warehouse now, just to pay child support. David had 2 kids, both under 10. He'd been a managing partner at a firm that employed 30 people. Now he was driving a forklift in Tacoma. Because Vanessa had handed Tyler the keys to his entire business strategy, I added David's story to the email, not as an exhibit, as context. A real-world consequence of what corporate espionage actually looked like when it landed on someone's life. The folder was complete now. 62 pages of violations. Financial records showing $183,000 in payments. A timeline of contracts lost and competitors destroyed. Testimonials from people whose businesses had been gutted. And buried in the final exhibit, the detail I knew would detonate everything. The crypto wallet traced back to a Fletcher subsidiary that Tyler had created without board approval. He'd been running a black op inside his own company, paying my wife with company resources he'd hidden from his investors, his board, his compliance team. That wasn't just a breach of partnership. It was fraud, embezzlement, the kind of thing that ended careers and started criminal investigations. I attached one last document to the email. My resignation letter from Brennan Logistics, effective immediately. If I was going to burn it all down, I wasn't going to do it while pretending to still be part of the system. Then I leaned back and looked at the clock. 4:47 a.m. In less than 3 hours, the email would send. Tyler would wake up to a phone call from his board's compliance attorney. Vanessa would realize the walls were closing in. And I would be sitting here, watching the life I'd built for 2 decades collapse into ash. But at least it would be honest ash. At least it would be mine. Monday morning broke cold and gray, the kind of Seattle drizzle that felt like the city was crying on your behalf. I've been awake for 31 hours straight, running on black coffee and the kind of clarity that only comes from burning every bridge you've ever crossed. At 7:14 a.m., my laptop chimed softly. Message sent. I closed my eyes and exhaled. It was done. Vanessa was still asleep upstairs. She'd stayed out late Sunday, probably with Tyler, probably celebrating a party they thought had gone perfectly. I'd heard her coming around too, stumbling slightly, humming some song I didn't recognize. I made a fresh pot of coffee and waited. The first call came at 7:52 a.m. My phone lit up with a Seattle number I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. 30 seconds later, a voicemail. Mr. Brennan, this is Laura Vickers from Hammond Supply Chain's legal department. We need to speak with you urgently regarding a compliance matter. Please return this call immediately. I deleted it. The second call came at 8:11 a.m. Vanessa's phone, vibrating on the kitchen counter, where she'd left it charging overnight. I glanced at the screen. Tyler Hammond. I'll let it ring. Then, at 8:19 a.m., my son's name flashed across my phone. Owen. My stomach dropped. I answered. Dad. His voice was tight, confused. What the hell is going on? What do you mean? I just got an email from the university financial aid office. My scholarship's been revoked. They said the funding source withdrew support effective immediately. That scholarship was from Hammond Supply Chain, Dad. What'd you do? I gripped the counter. I'd known this was coming. I'd run the scenario in my head a dozen times. But hearing the panic in my son's voice made it real in a way spreadsheets couldn't. Owen, I need you to listen to me. Do you know how much that scholarship was worth? $40,000 a year. I'm halfway through spring semester. How am I supposed to pay for this? I'll cover it. With what? He shot back. You just retired. And now I'm hearing rumors online that there's some kind of investigation in a mom's company. Dad, what the hell did you do? I closed my eyes. Your mother made some choices. I'm dealing with the consequences. By destroying my education. By protecting what's left of our family's integrity. He laughed, sharp and bitter. Integrity? You just cost me my degree because you couldn't handle Mom working with someone else. That's not integrity, Dad. That's vindictive. The line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, staring at the dark screen. Owen didn't know. He didn't know about the affair, the payments, the corporate espionage. All he saw was his father blowing up his future over a toast at a party. And I couldn't tell him. Not yet. Not until the legal process played out and the truth became public record. If it ever did. Upstairs, I heard Vanessa's phone start ringing. Then her footsteps, fast and urgent. She answered on the second ring. Tyler. Her voice was muffled through the floor, but I could hear the edge in it. What? Slow down. What email? A long pause. What do you mean compliance flagged my account? I didn't send anything unauthorized. Tyler, what the hell is happening? Another pause, longer this time. Then, he wouldn't. Elliot wouldn't do that. I poured myself another cup of coffee and walked to the living room window. Outside, the neighborhood was waking up. People heading to work, kids waiting for school buses, the mundane rhythm of lives that weren't imploding. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is David Park. I don't know what you did, but Hammond stock just dropped 11% in pre-market trading. Thank you. I didn't respond. Vanessa came downstairs 10 minutes later, still in her robe, phone clutched in her hand like a weapon. Her eyes were wild, makeup smudged from sleep. What did you do? She demanded. I turned from the window. I sent an email. To who? Hammond's board. The FBI. The SEC. Anyone who might be interested in knowing that you've been selling our company's intelligence for the past 8 months. Her face went white. You're insane. I have the crypto wallet records, Vanessa. I have emails. I have every document you sent to Tyler, every deposit that followed, every client we lost because you handed him our playbook. You want to call me insane? Go ahead. But we both know what you are. She opened her mouth, closed it, then whispered, Owen's scholarship is gone. Yes. He needed that. Then you shouldn't have sold us out to the man funding it. Her hands trembled. Elliot, if you think this makes you some kind of hero, I don't. I set my coffee down and looked at her directly. I think this makes me the man who finally stopped pretending. By Tuesday afternoon, the video had gone viral. I didn't know who posted it first. Some guest with a phone, probably. Didn't matter. The damage was done. The clip was only 43 seconds long. Vanessa, red dress gleaming under string lights, raising her glass to Tyler Hammond. To the man who actually holds the power. The camera caught my smile, the way I turned and walked away. The awkward laughter that followed. Someone had titled it, Wife Thanks Another Man at Husband's Retirement Party. 2.3 million views in 18 hours. The comment section was a war zone. Half the people called me a controlling husband who couldn't handle his wife having a career. The other half called Vanessa everything from a gold digger to worse. A few astute observers noted that Hammond Supply Chain stock had dropped 14% Monday morning and connected the dots. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Reporters, former colleagues, distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Everyone wanted a statement, an explanation, a piece of the story. I turned it off. Vanessa, meanwhile, had barricaded herself in the guest bedroom. I heard her on the phone constantly, her voice rising and falling in waves of panic and fury. Lawyers, probably. Maybe her sister. Definitely not Tyler. His attorney had sent her a cease and desist letter Monday evening, instructing her not to contact him regarding any business matters. Wednesday morning, she came downstairs with a laptop and a look of grim determination. "I need to show you something," she said. I was at the kitchen table, reading the Seattle Times coverage of Hammond's stock collapse. "I'm busy. Elliot, please. Just look." She turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was an email thread I recognized. Messages between her and Tyler. But there was one I hadn't seen before. The subject line, baby plans. My blood went cold. I scrolled through the exchange. It was dated 6 months ago. "Tyler, have you thought more about what we discussed?" "Vanessa, I stopped taking the pills 2 weeks ago. Didn't tell Elliot. He wouldn't understand." "Tyler, good. I want this. I want us to have something that's ours." "Vanessa, me too. A fresh start. Something that isn't tainted by everything that happened with Lily." I looked up at her. She was pale, her hands trembling. "You were trying to get pregnant," I said slowly. "With him." She nodded, eyes glistening. "I didn't think you'd find that." "How long?" 6 months. Maybe longer. I don't know anymore." "And if you'd gotten pregnant? What was the plan?" "Pass it off as mine." She didn't answer. I pushed the laptop back toward her. "Get out of my sight." "Elliot, I know this looks." I said get out. She grabbed the laptop and fled upstairs. I sat there, hands flat on the table, trying to process what I just read. She hadn't just betrayed me with an affair. She tried to create a child with another man while still living under my roof, still wearing my ring, still pretending we had a marriage. That evening, I got a call from my sister, Jennifer. "I need you to buy out my share of the boutique," she said without preamble. "What?" "The business I co-own with Vanessa. I can't do this anymore. Elliot, the scandal's killing us. We've had 3 vendors pull contracts this week. Customers are leaving reviews, calling us homewreckers. I've got $80,000 tied up in that place, and I need out before it's worth nothing. Jennifer, I don't have $80,000 liquid right now." "Then we're closing it," she said flatly, "because I'm not staying in business with a woman who tried to destroy my brother's life. Figure it out, Elliot. You've got 2 weeks. She hung up. I called my bank. My liquidity was limited. Most of my assets were in stock or tied up in retirement accounts. Pulling $80,000 would mean selling Hammond shares at a massive loss or liquidating funds early with penalties. I did the math. Either way, I'd lose another $120,000 minimum. But Jennifer was right. Vanessa had poisoned everything she touched. If the boutique survived, it would only be because I'd funded my own betrayal. I authorized the withdrawal. Thursday morning, my mother called. "Elliot Michael Brennan," she said, using my full name like I was 12. "What on earth have you done?" "Hi, Mom." "Don't hi Mom me. I just got off the phone with Vanessa. She's devastated. She said you've frozen her out, filed for divorce without even trying counseling, destroyed her career over a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding." She made a toast at a party. "Elliot, that's all. You're acting like she committed treason." "She committed fraud, Mom. Corporate espionage. She sold our company's intelligence to a competitor for nearly $200,000 in cryptocurrency. That's not a misunderstanding." Silence on the other end. "Then, I don't believe that. I have the bank records, the emails, the crypto wallet, all of it. Vanessa wouldn't do that." "She did." My mother's voice hardened. "You know, your father made mistakes too. But I forgave him. That's what marriage is, Elliot. Forgiveness." "What mistakes?" Another pause. "That's not important now." "Mom, what mistakes?" She sighed. "Your father had an affair. 38 years ago. I found out, we went to counseling, and we moved past it. We had 35 more happy years together because I chose grace over bitterness. I felt like I'd been punched. Dad cheated on you. Once. He was young, stupid, under pressure. But he came back, and we rebuilt. That's what you're supposed to do. Vanessa didn't just cheat, Mom. She tried to get pregnant with another man. She sold company secrets. She helped destroy people's lives for money. And you're destroying your son's education and your sister's business because you can't forgive. Where does that leave you, Elliot?" I had no answer. She hung up. By Friday, the walls had closed incompletely. Owen hadn't returned my calls. Jennifer was demanding her buyout by end of week. My mother had sent me a long email about the sanctity of marriage and the sin of pride. And Vanessa had hired a lawyer who'd sent me a letter threatening legal action for marital sabotage and intentional infliction of emotional distress. I sat in my study, surrounded by documents, and wondered if I'd made the right choice. The knock on the door came at noon. I opened it to find a woman in a gray pantsuit, mid-40s, carrying a briefcase. Elliot Brennan? Yes. I'm Agent Sarah Vance, FBI Financial Crimes Division. May I come in? I stepped aside. She sat on the couch and pulled out a tablet. I've reviewed the materials you submitted Monday regarding the alleged financial fraud involving Vanessa Brennan and Tyler Hammond. I have some follow-up questions. For the next 2 hours, I walked her through everything. The emails, the crypto payments, the timeline of contract losses, the connection to David Park's company collapse. She took notes, asked clarifying questions, and showed no emotion. When I finished, she said, "This is compelling evidence. However, I need to inform you that pursuing this will likely result in criminal charges against your wife. I understand. It will also likely trigger a broader investigation into your company's handling of confidential information. Your business practices will be scrutinized, your partnership agreements dissected, your own conduct examined." I expected that. She studied me. "Mr. Brennan, in my experience, most people in your position want revenge more than justice. They want to hurt the person who hurt them. But what they don't anticipate is how much it hurts them in return. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Owen's voice on the phone, bitter and betrayed. About Jennifer losing her business. About my mother's disappointment. About the retirement I'd planned, now evaporated. "No," I said honestly, "but I'm doing it anyway." She nodded. "We'll be in touch." After she left, I sat in the silence of my living room and let the weight settle. That evening, Vanessa appeared in the doorway. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. "The FBI came to my lawyer's office today," she said quietly. "I know. They're talking about wire fraud charges. Conspiracy. I could go to prison, Elliot. You should have thought about that before you sold us out." She stepped into the room. "I know I made mistakes." "Mistakes?" I stood. "You tried to conceive another man's child while married to me. You systematically betrayed every confidence I ever shared with you. You helped destroy people's livelihoods for money. Those aren't mistakes, Vanessa. That's who you decided to be." Her face twisted. "And who are you now? The righteous crusader? You've lost your son's respect. Your sister hates you. Your own mother thinks you're cruel. You're going to end up alone in this house with nothing but your principles to keep you warm." "Maybe," I said, "but at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror." She turned to leave, then stopped. "There's something else you should know." "What?" "The reason I blamed you for Lily's death. The reason I could never forgive you." My chest tightened. "What about it?" "You were supposed to pick her up from school that day. But you were in Bellevue, closing some deal you thought was more important than our daughter. If you'd been there, if you'd just kept your promise, she never would have gotten in that car with her friend's drunk brother. She'd still be alive." The words hit like a sledgehammer. "I know you've carried that guilt," she continued. "And I've let you. Because it was easier to blame you than to admit that I was the one who told her to catch a ride. I was the one shopping with friends when she called asking for pickup. I was the one who said yes when that boy offered to drive her home. My vision blurred. What? I killed our daughter, Elliot. Not you. Me. And I've spent 5 years punishing you for it, because I couldn't face what I'd done." She walked out. I stood frozen, her words echoing through the empty house. Everything I believed about Lily's death, every ounce of guilt I'd carried, every sleepless night wondering if I'd made a different choice, had been a lie. Vanessa had let me shoulder the blame for 5 years, had weaponized my grief to justify her betrayal. And now, even in confession, she'd found a way to twist the knife. The lawsuit arrived Monday morning via certified mail. Hammond Supply Chain Systems versus Elliot Brennan. 23 pages of legal allegations claiming I'd engaged in corporate espionage, illegal surveillance, and intentional interference with business relationships. They were seeking $25 million in damages. I call my attorney, Marcus. No, damn it, that name's forbidden. I call my attorney, Richard Palmer. They're claiming you created the mirror inbox without authorization, he explained. That you violated federal wiretap laws by monitoring Vanessa's communications without her knowledge. If they can prove that, everything you've gathered becomes inadmissible, and you're potentially looking at criminal exposure. I was the company's IT administrator. I had full access to all company systems. For business purposes. But did Vanessa know you were monitoring her personal correspondence? I didn't answer. That's what I thought. Richard said. We need to talk about settlement. No. Elliot, listen to me. If this goes to trial and a judge rules against you, you could lose everything. Your house, your savings, your freedom. Hammond's lawyers are sharks, and they smell blood. Let them. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. Tyler Hammond paid my wife nearly $200,000 to steal company intelligence. He destroyed David Park's business. He's embezzled funds through shell companies. If his lawyers want to put all of that on the record in open court, I'll be happy to oblige. Richard sighed. I'll prepare our response. But Elliot, this is going to get ugly. After I hung up, I found Vanessa in the kitchen, packing boxes. What are you doing? I asked. Leaving. My lawyer found me a rental in Fremont. I can't stay here anymore. Good. She turned to face me. Before I go, I need to tell you something. About Lily. My chest tightened. You've said enough about Lily. No, I haven't. Her voice was raw. You spent 5 years carrying guilt that wasn't yours. Blaming yourself for being in Bellevue when you should have picked her up from school. But that's not the whole truth. You already told me you were the one who said she could catch a ride. That's not what I mean. She set down the box she was holding. After Lily died, I couldn't look at you without seeing everything we'd lost. Every plan we'd made for our future. Every dream we'd had. And I blamed you because it was easier than blaming myself for not being there. But the real reason I pulled away, the reason I started the affair, it wasn't about Tyler. Then what was it about? It was about punishing you for still being able to function, for going back to work, for moving forward, for not drowning in grief the way I was. You kept living, Elliot, and I hated you for it. I stared at her. So you destroyed our marriage because I didn't fall apart. I destroyed our marriage because I fell apart and needed someone to blame. Tyler was just convenient. The affair, the money, all of it. It was me trying to feel something other than the whole Lily left behind. That doesn't make it better, Vanessa. I know. She picked up the box again. I just wanted you to understand. Before I go. Before this all ends. She walked out, and I listened to her car pull away. I stood in the empty kitchen, her words echoing through the silence. Then I called David Park. David, it's Elliot. I need a favor. Name it. Hammond's suing me for $25 million. They're claiming I violated wiretap laws. I need you to testify about what they did to your company. Put on the record. There was a pause. You know, if I do that, they'll come after me too. I know. And I wouldn't ask if there was another way. Another pause, longer this time. Then, when's the hearing? 2 weeks. I'll be there. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and drafted an email to the SEC investigator who'd contacted me last week. In it, I outlined every piece of evidence I had regarding Tyler's shell company, the payments to Vanessa, the systematic theft of proprietary information. Then I added something new, a list of every other company that had lost major contracts to Hammond over the past 3 years. 8 firms in total, including David's. I attached financial records showing the correlation between those contract losses and suspicious activity in Hammond's corporate filings. Subject line, pattern of fraudulent business practices, expanded evidence. I hit send. If Tyler wanted a war, I'd give him one. But it wouldn't be fought in the shadows anymore. It would be public, documented, and permanent. The hearing was set for March 15th, 2 weeks after the lawsuit landed. Richard advised me to dress conservatively, speak only when spoken to, and avoid making eye contact with Tyler or his legal team. I ignored all 3 suggestions. I wore the same navy suit I'd worn to my retirement party, sat in the front row of the gallery where Tyler couldn't avoid seeing me. And when his lead attorney stood to argue their motion to suppress evidence, I stared directly at Tyler until he looked away. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Judge Patricia Hoffman presided, mid-60s, with the kind of sharp eyes that suggested she'd heard every excuse and believed none of them. Tyler's attorney, a man named Gregory Stone, argued for 40 minutes. His central claim, I'd violated federal wiretap statutes by monitoring Vanessa's email without her consent. He cited case law, precedent, statutory language. He painted me as a controlling husband who'd used corporate resources to spy on his wife's personal life. When he finished, Judge Hoffman turned to Richard. Counselor, Richard stood. Your Honor, Mr. Brennan was the IT administrator for Brennan Logistics Solutions. He had full authorization to monitor all company email accounts for security and compliance purposes. Mrs. Brennan's email was a company account, issued by the company, governed by company policy. There is no reasonable expectation of privacy in a corporate email system. But the content of those emails was personal in nature. Stone interrupted. The content is irrelevant. Richard shot back. Mrs. Brennan used company resources to conduct an extramarital affair and transmit confidential business information to a competitor. Those actions are what triggered the monitoring, not Mr. Brennan's personal grievances. Judge Hoffman leaned back. Mr. Stone, do you have evidence that Mr. Brennan's monitoring was motivated solely by marital discord rather than legitimate business concerns? Stone hesitated. The timing suggests. I asked for evidence, not speculation. Stone shuffled papers. We're prepared to call Mrs. Brennan to testify about the nature of their relationship and her husband's controlling behavior. Your Honor, Richard said quickly, if Mrs. Brennan testifies, we'll introduce evidence of the $183,000 she received in cryptocurrency payment from Hammond Supply Chain in exchange for proprietary information. We'll also call witnesses whose businesses were destroyed by intelligence she provided. This isn't a domestic dispute. It's a criminal conspiracy. The courtroom went silent. Judge Hoffman looked at Stone. Do you wish to proceed with calling Mrs. Brennan? Stone glanced at Tyler, who shook his head almost imperceptibly. No, Your Honor. Then I'm denying your motion to suppress. Judge Hoffman said. The evidence was obtained through legitimate business monitoring. Whatever marital issues exist between Mr. and Mrs. Brennan are separate from the question of corporate malfeasance. Motion denied. We'll reconvene in 30 days for a full hearing on the merits. She banged her gavel. Tyler stood abruptly and left the courtroom without looking at me. Outside, Richard clapped me on the shoulder. That was closer than I'd like, but we won the first round. What happens now? Now they try to settle. They know if this goes to full trial, everything comes out. The payments, the fraud, all of it. They'll offer you money to make it go away quietly. And if I refuse, then we go to war. That evening, I got a call from an unknown number. Mr. Brennan, this is Jessica Hartwell, Compliance Director at the SEC. We've reviewed your supplemental filing regarding Hammond Supply Chain. I wanted to inform you that we're opening a formal investigation into their corporate practices. We'll need you to sit for a deposition within the next 2 weeks. I'll be there. One more thing. We've identified irregularities in at least 6 other companies that lost major contracts to Hammond over the past 3 years. Your evidence suggests a pattern of systematic fraud. If our investigation confirms that, this could result in criminal referrals. I closed my eyes. Thank you. After we hung up, I sat on my porch and watched the rain fall over Seattle. Somewhere across the city, Tyler Hammond was probably getting the same phone call from his own attorney, learning that the SEC was coming for him, realizing that the empire he'd built on stolen intelligence was about to collapse. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired, but I also felt something else. Something I hadn't felt in 5 years. Honest. The SEC investigation moved faster than anyone expected. By April, federal agents had executed search warrants on Hammond Supply Chain's headquarters in Bellevue. They seized servers, financial records, 3 years of communications logs. Tyler's shell company in Delaware was exposed. The cryptocurrency payments traced back to corporate accounts he'd hidden from his own board. The systematic fraud documented across 8 victim companies. The press coverage was relentless. Seattle Tech CEO accused of multi-million-dollar espionage scheme. Headlines like that don't fade quietly, and Tyler's face was plastered across every business publication in the Pacific Northwest. Hammond stock collapsed, down 63% in 2 weeks. Institutional investors bailed. The board held an emergency session and voted unanimously to remove Tyler as CEO. They launched their own internal investigation, trying to salvage what remained of the company's reputation. Criminal charges followed: wire fraud, conspiracy, embezzlement of corporate funds. The indictment was 47 pages long. Tyler's attorney reached out to Richard with a settlement offer in May. Drop the civil suit, and Tyler would cooperate with federal prosecutors in exchange for a reduced sentence. They offered me $2 million to make it all go away, quietly. I refused. Let him face everything he did. I told Richard. No deals. No settlements. I want this on the record. Vanessa's situation was more complicated. The FBI offered her immunity in exchange for testimony against Tyler. Her lawyer advised her to take it. She did. I watched her testify in June. She looked smaller, somehow diminished. The red dress confidence was gone, replaced by a gray pantsuit and trembling hands. She detailed every payment, every leaked document, every meeting where she and Tyler had coordinated their strategy. The jury looked at her with contempt. Not sympathy, contempt. The divorce finalized the same week. The employment contract I'd written years ago was airtight. Breach of confidentiality voided all spousal claims, all community property rights. She walked out of the courtroom with nothing but her car and whatever personal items she'd taken to Fremont. She moved back to her parents' house in Spokane 2 weeks later. I heard this from Owen, who'd driven up to help her pack. Jennifer's boutique closed in July. The scandal had poisoned the business. Vendors pulled contracts. Customers stopped coming. She couldn't afford the buyout I'd offered, and without Vanessa's financial contribution, the lease became unsustainable. She sent me a text. I hoped destroying her was worth losing me too. I didn't respond. Owen came home in late July, between his junior and senior year. We sat on the back porch where the party had been, drinking beer in uncomfortable silence while the Seattle twilight settled around us. "I'm sorry," he said finally, "for what I said on the phone. For thinking you did this out of spite. You didn't know the whole story. I should have trusted you." He stared at his beer bottle. "Mom called me last week. From Spokane." She sounded completely lost. Like she doesn't know who she is anymore. She made her choices. "I know. But she's still my mom, you know. Does it make me disloyal if I still care about her?" "No," I said quietly. "It makes you a better person than I am." He shook his head. "You paid for my entire year when the scholarship disappeared. $40,000 you didn't have to spend. You could have let me drop out. Could have let Tyler's revenge hit me too. But you didn't. You earned that degree, Owen. I wasn't going to let him take it from you." We sat in silence for a while, listening to the distant sound of traffic on I-5. "What happens now?" he asked. "With you, I mean." I looked out at the garden, still recovering from the party that had destroyed everything. The roses were growing back, fuller than before. The fountain ran clear again. "I rebuild," I said. "Smaller, quieter, maybe some consulting work, maybe nothing for a while. Sounds lonely, maybe, but it's honest. And honest is something I haven't been able to say about my life in a long time." He nodded, understanding more than I'd given him credit for. "For what it's worth, Dad, I think you did the right thing." 18 months after the party, I stood in the same garden where everything had fallen apart. The roses had grown back fuller, wilder. The fountain ran clear, its gentle splashing the only sound besides wine through the trees. The string lights were gone. I'd taken them down myself the week after Vanessa left. What remained was just open sky and the honest simplicity of nature reclaiming what had been too carefully manicured. Tyler Hammond was in the second year of a 7-year sentence at a federal facility in Sheridan, Oregon. The trial had lasted 3 weeks. Prosecutors had presented every email, every payment, every destroyed business in excruciating detail. The jury deliberated for 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. His empire was gone. Hammond's supply chain had filed for bankruptcy protection 6 months after his conviction. The investors had scattered. The employees, over 300 of them, had lost their jobs. I felt responsible for that sometimes. Then I'd remember the 8 companies Tyler had destroyed, the hundreds of other jobs he'd eliminated through fraud, and the responsibility would shift back where it belonged. Vanessa never went to prison. Her immunity deal held, but her life had collapsed anyway. According to Owen, she was working retail in Spokane, living with her parents at 45, trying to rebuild from absolute zero. Her name was toxic in the business world. No company would touch her. Owen had told me she'd asked about me once. Wanted to know if I was happy. He said he told her he didn't know. The truth was more complicated than happy or unhappy. I'd sold Brennan Logistics to a private equity firm in Boston for a decent price, considering the scandal. Enough to live comfortably, invest conservatively, and ensure Owen graduated debt-free. I didn't miss running the company. Didn't miss the stress, the politics, the constant pressure to grow. What I missed was the version of myself who believed hard work and loyalty would be rewarded with loyalty in return. That man was gone. In his place was someone harder, clearer, less willing to trust appearances. David Park had testified at Tyler's trial, stood on that witness stand and detailed how Hammond had stolen his business model, undercut his pricing, and systematically destroyed everything he'd built. The jury had listened in silence, and I'd seen several of them glance at Tyler with disgust. David and I had coffee once a month now. He'd found work at a logistics startup in Tacoma, was slowly rebuilding. We didn't talk about the trial much anymore. Mostly just fishing, weather, the Seahawks' perpetual mediocrity. My mother had sent a letter 3 months ago. Short, handwritten. I was wrong to judge you so harshly. Your father would have been proud of what you did. Love, Mom. I kept it in my desk drawer, reading it sometimes when the loneliness got heavy. Jennifer still wouldn't speak to me. I tried reaching out twice. Both times, my messages went unanswered. Maybe she'd forgive me eventually. Maybe she wouldn't. That was a price I'd accepted when I hit send on that first email. Owen had graduated with honors in May. Got a job at a tech firm in Portland, doing logistics optimization. Called every Sunday without fail. The distance between us was closing, inch by painful inch. We were rebuilding trust the slow way, through consistency, honesty, showing up. The viral video was still online. Last time I checked, it had 3.8 million views. The comments were still a war zone of people arguing about marriage, loyalty, feminism, toxic masculinity. Every hot-button issue projected on a 43 seconds of footage. I'd stopped reading them months ago. What mattered wasn't the digital archive of my humiliation. What mattered was standing here, in this garden, knowing I'd chosen truth over comfort. I thought about my father sometimes, about the affair my mother had forgiven, about the 35 years of marriage they'd built after it. Maybe she'd been right that forgiveness was the nobler path. But forgiveness requires genuine remorse, and Vanessa had only shown regret when the consequences became unavoidable. That's not the same thing. I'd lost my wife, my sister, parts of my relationship with my son. I'd lost the retirement I planned, the comfortable future I'd envisioned. The cost had been brutal and comprehensive. But I'd gained something too, the ability to look in the mirror without flinching. The knowledge that when everything collapsed, I hadn't compromised so I was to make it easier. Some men spend their whole lives pretending, building empires on foundations they know are rotting, smiling through toasts that gut them, accepting betrayals because exposing them costs too much. I'd been one of those men for too long. The evening settled over Seattle, gray and cool. I walked back into the house, my house, paid for and mine. The silence inside was my own. No more performances. No more pretending. Just the quiet truth of a life rebuilt on solid ground.